Look, I can't reiterate more often here how inspired I am to see this many people on a weekend dedicate their time to becoming better water polo coaches. So it's Sunday morning, and you guys are here, not with your families, here to get better as coaches. So I just give you credit, and I appreciate this, and it's inspiring for me as well. Right? For all of us, when we come here, we see everybody trying to get better. We're obsessed with this, and to see more people obsessed with this is around the country just continues to be inspiring, lack of a better word. So thank you guys for being here. This is a lot of fun. Just the cadence for the day will go as such, right? Well, I'll start this morning off. After this, Coach Layson will go through a presentation on planning a season and team culture, and then we'll have a lunch out there for you guys. When we have lunch out there, get a chance to talk more, right? Some more networking, just kind of continue the conversations that we've been talking about and starting. And then Coach Kloot has one more presentation with effective planning as well, which I think is a really good one. And then we'll have another panel at the end to be able to answer any questions and wrap things up. And that's your day, right? And that's the day. It's going to go by fast. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of stuff we're trying to get through quick, but that's the cadence of the day. I may have some time for questions this morning when we're going through this kind of NCAA stuff we're talking now, but again, the question bucket is out there. If you want to throw questions in there during the course, we'll get to it and we'll try to be at that point. So anyway, that's what we're doing today. If you're here for the first time, some people I know didn't make it on Saturday, came Sunday, welcome. If there's something you missed yesterday, you want to get to us, let us know. We're working on how we can best share this information, if it's going to be like a Google Drive folder, right? Chicago Development Summit, and shove it all in there and share with you, or if it comes in a different way, we'll sort it out. And that's why I hired Drew Kloot. He's much better at this stuff than I am. So he'll find a way, right, to get us this information. So anyway, good morning. I'll walk off the mic. So for me, I give this college talk to athletes and parents now. I've been giving this college talk to athletes and parents now for 15 years or so, right? So that's why you see that clip art on there. That's like Microsoft Word 2001, like no joke. I was coaching. I got my first college coaching job, right, 05, and at Bucknell University in central Pennsylvania. I get there, and I'm starting to do all these recruiting trips, and athletes were coming to visit, and nobody knew what this process was like, how to navigate this process. Parents were confused, kids were confused. So I'm like, well, let's start putting some things onto in a way to communicate to the athletes and the coaches so that they can better understand this. Myself and a few colleagues of mine, Mike Schofield at Navy, Randy Burgess down in Coronado, Felix Mercado, who is now the Brown head coach, kind of all got together and started putting some of these things in the same place. And that's when this PowerPoint started, that's where these conversations started, these handouts, all these things. So it's been about 15 years of doing this. My intention today is not to regurgitate this talk to you. That's not why you're here. Because my assumption is, because I know for a fact many of you in here have heard me give this talk, right? So there's a good chunk of you in here who have heard me give this talk. Two, I've done it so many times now, there's videos of this thing rolling around everywhere. So if you want it, you could find it somewhere else, right? You can, and I think we have it on our USA Water Polo website. I did a webinar one day with it. You can have that. That talk is very much directed towards the athletes and the coaches. Athletes and the parents. What that talk does not do, I think, specifically is talk to coaches. And what is the coach's role? What's the role of the high school coach? What's the role of the club coach? Right? What's your role in getting this going? And I can also offer some backdrop and some context as to what's happening nationally from a collegiate standpoint and how you guys all fit into that as well. And so I think that's the pathway I want to go. There's other places for you guys to get some of these resources. Like I said, I'm happy. You can find my presentation that I give to the athletes anytime. It's obviously updated all the time with new rules. I know you guys have something coming up here in the Midwest in a couple of weeks that you can hit up, right, about specific NCAA rules where you can send your parents and your athletes to those things. That's awesome, right? I think you guys can go do that. But there's a disconnect in this process if the coaches aren't educated. It's a massive disconnect. So what happens is your athletes and your parents will come to you and you'll say, hey, help me navigate this thing. And you're like, if you don't have the right answers for them, or if you're not ready to prepare them for this, it's a challenge. And it becomes a challenge for the college coaches, right? And so I come to you as someone who had to go through this as a college coach, obviously, for over a decade at a few different universities. So I've seen it both ways, right? At Bucknell University, small liberal arts college, high selective admissions process, highly selective admissions process. Then did it for 4 years at UC Santa Barbara on the West Coast, so a little bit different, right? In terms of a lot different, right? A lot different in terms of what the recruiting was like. I had to go through it as a club coach myself. I had to go through it as a high school coach, right? Navigating this process, and then now in my spare time, I actually had to go through it as an athlete. When I give this talk to the athletes, I tell them my story as an athlete of how I went through this and how we didn't have the internet and had to like type my resume on a typewriter and put it in the mail and all that shit. It's really funny, right? And it's good to them, but they don't get it, right? And so I know a lot of people played college water polo here all over the place. I keep meeting guys, right? And when women that have played college water polo right all over, so you know how your process went as well. So there's ways that we could talk about this pathway and this pipeline in a lot of different ways. And then now where I'm sitting in my spare time, I'm the executive director of the Association of Collegiate Water Polo Coaches, right? So, in my spare time, I run our Collegiate Coaches Association that represents all college coaches in the country. And what I try to do from that standpoint is help grow the game at the collegiate level. And then also when we give these talks and we give this information, we can say that, hey, this is approved by this association so that everybody around the country is kind of relatively on the same page. You're gonna have some college coaches who disagree on different things, right? Some college coaches are gonna want different things from film. They're gonna have different opinions, and that's fine. But overall, the overriding philosophies of what we're trying to tell coaches and kids are generally the same, right? And that's why I wanna make sure all the coaches have this information and you're out there. So that's where I'm coming from on this, all right? And so I think that's gonna be really important. I will also tell you that the reason I like giving this talk to coaches outside of California, actually everywhere, it doesn't matter, right? Where I like giving this talk to coaches specifically, and this is one of the few times I've get a chance to address coaches specifically, is I'd like to level set the realities of what it takes for your athletes to be recruited. I think there's some misconception out there of where we as college coaches, if I'm saying I'm representing college coaches, want athletes or the biases that are inherent in the recruiting process and where these things come out. I can tell you in my years at Bucknell, and many of you were with me in this, a few of you in the room were with me in this process, I spent a lot of time in Chicago, all right? I spent a lot of time in Chicago recruiting. And one of my favorite things about having that job and coaching at that job, this is just a little personal side of this, was having athletes from the Midwest and having athletes not from California on my roster and competing against California teams and beating them and doing really well with them. Because these were some of my favorite athletes to coach. And it's no joke, right? Because they have work ethic, right? And most importantly, where I'm gonna get back on this, they had the vital qualities needed to be successful at the college level. And that's where I think the disconnect is with most coaches, right? Is the vital things that need to be successful at the college level have a lot to do with athleticism, have a lot to do with work ethic, have a lot to do with how they do in the classroom. Has very little to do with how many state championships they won. Has very little to do with how many goals they scored in a season. Has very little to do with whatever statistic you want to throw my way as a college coach of what they did, right? I can also tell you that many of the best players I had came from places that have far less developed water polo than anywhere you think. I'll tell you a couple of them, right? And you guys have seen this if you were there and watched us play back in the day, right? My starting goalie was from Brooklyn, New York. There's almost no water polo in Brooklyn, New York. Because now we have like 3 clubs started there. It's awesome, right? But back there is Brooklyn, New York. When he sent me his recruiting video, he was standing on the shallow end, right? Playing shallow end goalie and getting scored on every possession, right? Literally every possession he was getting scored on. Skip over his head, right? You could do it. But came on a recruiting trip, came to my summer camp, right? 6'8", right? Good kid, right? Worked really hard, good student, right? And decided he wanted to put in 3.5 years of really hard work. And by his senior year, he was an All-American. The senior year, he's an All-American. We're in conference finals with him as our starting goal. My captain on the men's team, for 2 years, his last 2 years, came from New Hampshire. New Hampshire. Anybody know, have you ever guys go play water polo in New Hampshire? Had games in New Hampshire? There's no water polo in New Hampshire. The captain of my women's team for 3 years, one of the best players I ever coached, was from New Mexico. Albuquerque, New Mexico, right? So when I talk to coaches and athletes, I'm like, Coach, I'm from Chicago, I don't know what to do. Coaches aren't looking at me, they don't want Chicago athletes. I'm like, are you from New Hampshire? Did you play in Vermont? Yeah? Did you play in New Mexico? Okay, then you're fine. Believe me, you're fine. Then the limitations that you're talking about, or the limitations from the recruiting standpoint that you may see, are something different than what you think they are, right? And that's what I want to level set through this with you guys today, right? And I think that's really important to see and hear about it. So in your packets, I gave you guys something that may help you guys level set and have some information. This is the first time we put together a handout for what is not for the athletes, it's for you guys, right? As coaches, as we go through this. And then I'm going to fly through this presentation. Of what I give the athletes, just so you can see it, but then highlight the things that I think are relevant to the call to you guys as coaches along the way, and how we can get more of your athletes playing at the collegiate level, right? So this is another thing. I start this talk. When I give this talk to the athletes, okay, I tell them every single person should play collegiate water polo. So I just put out a stat, or someone just put out, CWPA did, I think. CWPA put out a stat from the NCAA, right? So the NCAA, I'm big on Twitter, right? So I'm always on Twitter. There's a great Twitter handle called NCAA Research. If you don't follow NCAA Research, you should follow NCAA Research, right? So NCAA likes to put out, right, some data and some studies that they put out a few times. So the latest one that they put out that I saw recently was that a percentage of high school athletes that go on to play at the college level, right? And still, for us in water polo, it's approximately, right, with both sides, men's and women's, 5% of high school athletes are going on to play at the collegiate level. 5%. And I can tell you that's a lot of that has to do with us as coaches in this room. Can't be 5% of high school athletes that go play in college. Because I know from these other roles, from this role I have with the association, when I'm dealing with colleges and ADs, when the Washington and Jefferson coach and AD call me and say, we only have 10 girls on our roster. How do we only have 10 girls on our roster? Because people are choosing not to go there. And we have financial aid. We have all kinds of stuff. We're ready to help. We're ready to be here. We'll get you accepted into this school. They're not there. So what you should be telling your athletes right now is there's no limitation to their ability to play in college. Everybody should be playing. There's a college for every single one of your athletes. And not only is there a college for every single one of your athletes, there's a college that's thrilled to have them. Thrilled. Because they're dying for athletes. They need people on their roster, right? They're trying to get people in, and they need them there. So every one of your athletes should be there, right? So the bottom line, your message to them is there's a place for you to play college water polo. That's number one, right? Get them out there and tell them to get active in this process, right? Number two, not only do we want them playing at this next level or this opportunity to be at this next level, right? They can contribute. I feel like sometimes I had this misconception as a high school coach, and I hope that you don't have it as well. I was coaching high school water polo in Burbank, California, not a water polo hotbed, right? We were not very good, right? Small pool, all the same stuff. And this is like 2003, and I'm getting coached, like George Washington coach called me and said, I'm interested in one of your athletes. And my first reaction was, how is she going to play at George Washington, right? George Washington wants her out there, and this is true story. I'm just sharing with you guys this morning. And I'm like freaking out, like I don't think she's good enough, right? I don't know how she's going to handle it. This girl, very little experience, didn't really play club water polo, right? Didn't play water polo year round. Ends up going to George Washington as captain her junior and senior year, right? And she could play. Why? Because she could swim pretty good. Was a really good student, right? Didn't have a lot of tactical experience, but was able to make it. So us as coaches, don't be the people limiting your own. I was one of those people. I don't want you to make the same mistake I did, right? Where you limit your own athletes. Well, I'm not sure if you can play in college. Everyone can play in college. There's a place for them, right? You just got to find the right place for them as we go. And then when I talk to the athletes, I tell them this, right? Hey, everybody should play in college, and I tell them what we're looking for are some of these things. Coach Popovich put this out a little while ago on how he evaluates. I'm a huge Popovich fan. You've already found out that we're big music fans, and we're big hoops fans, right? So that's generally what we have in common outside of being obsessed with water polo 24/7, right? Is that Popovich came out and said this straight up, right? And this is somebody who we values character and values what we're trying to develop, what we're trying to look for in athletes. He's our USA coach this summer in the Tokyo Olympics as well. So something to be able to tell them on this. Also tell them we got to be realistic, right? We got to be realistic in where they're coming from and what we're trying to accomplish. So with all our athletes too, I try to level set this completely with their perspective, right? That you have to be working on your game, you got to be good at what you're doing, but you have to have some perspective in this. And these are the three things. I told you I'll fly through this. I usually talk about this for like the good first 20, 30 minutes in the college talk with the athletes. But they have to educate themselves. Because we're the ones who could lead them astray. So when I talk to the athletes, I tell them, be wary of your high school coach. Be wary of your club coach. Be wary of your parents, right? Imagine growing up in a household. We're freaking crazy in America. You could grow up in a household, especially here, right, where somebody is wearing a sweater, right? Is wearing a sweater that says, my maid went to Ohio State, yeah? And every day they're wearing that sweater, you know?
and F Michigan, right? And do this, and we have these things, right? In America, we're completely obsessed with this NCAA thing in a really weird way. So now imagine growing up in this household, or in a school who does that, or a teacher who does that, right? Or someone else who does that, and then now in your head, oh yeah, that place is not for me. But that could be the best possible place for that kid to go, right? Or somebody else went there and they had a negative experience, and now that negative experience came back and affected them. So what's most important in this process is that they own it. They own it, they educate themselves, and now as you guys, what I'm again trying to level set for us as coaches, when they come in, how do you help them? How can you become a resource for them? How can you listen? How can you be the ones who are educated as well, right, to help guide them through this process? And they got to keep an open mind. Because the other thing I get all the time is, Coach, I'm going to go D1. I'm going to go D1. We're going to talk a lot about D3 in a second, right? But why are we talking about D1? Where is it in our heads, right? Especially in NCAA, this weird place. You know, that we have NCAA, this NCAA scene only exists in America. So when I travel the world, right, and how this compares everywhere else, we're the only people who are so passionate about their academic school they go to and the sport attached to it. When I try to explain this to Australians, I try to explain this to people in Europe or in South America, they're so confused by this, right? They're so confused because with this, oh, I'm going to be D1. What that could mean for a basketball player, right? And Coach Hill and other people who played D1 basketball and could tell us all these stories. That means something when there's 500 schools that offer Division I basketball and 400 that offer Division II and 400 that offer Division III. Yeah, there is a separation. But when you're talking about right now, currently, approximately 63 varsity women's programs in the country and approximately 50 varsity men's programs in the country, and that's Divisions I, II, and III combined. So where does that put us on the map collegiately, right? So that also means if you play Division II, you play Division III, what are you going to do? You're going to play Division I schools in your schedule. Otherwise, the schedule will be pretty damn boring, right? You can't just play each other all over again. And Division III schools, Division I schools all the time. And a small Division II school will beat a Division I school all the time. And if you go to Bucknell or Harvard or Princeton or something, you play Division I water polo, it actually really looks more like Division III water polo. Because you're not competing in the summer, right? Because they go by that, and I didn't mean by level of play, right? But by the rules, right? Because that's how the rules are. I'm D1, right? But I can't train in the summer, right? Can't have off-season workouts. It actually has more like D3 rules, correct? Right? So what does that mean when the kid comes and says, I gotta be D1? So we gotta get this out of their heads, right? Because they're in their high school and their buddies, the females they're with, the men they're with, in their high school classrooms are soccer players, football players, and other sports that maybe convolute this, right? So they have to keep an open mind about this. They may have to go, or they may have a great college experience at a school they've never heard of. Augustana College, right? Millikan University, right? Urbana, okay? Places that are adding, Monmouth, here in the Midwest. You may have not heard of that school growing up, you're gonna have a great experience there. Carthage, Pomona College in California, right? Mount St. Mary's just added Division I, men's and women's water polo in Maryland. Pumped on this, right? It's a great place. Brand new school, just starting this. Maybe they didn't grow up knowing about Mount St. Mary's. Where did they grow up knowing? They grew up knowing about Notre Dame. Grew up knowing about Michigan, grew up knowing about Ohio State, right? University of Illinois. I get it, right? I get it. I grew up right by the Rose Bowl, right? And when I was a kid, it was all about UCLA. I had a UCLA sweater, right? All the time, everywhere I went. And I still had that sweater, and then I got recruited to go to UCI. First day in the weight room, I was wearing my UCLA sweater from when I was a kid. Coach Newland almost ripped my head off, right? I kicked down, and then I had to go I literally had to throw the sweater away, right? I had to go out of the room, I had to throw the sweater away, and go back in the weight room and keep lifting. But I was indoctrinated, right? I grew up in Pasadena. It's UCLA or USC, that's it, right? That's where I live. So I get it. Your kids are sitting here going, I'm going to University of Illinois. I'm going to Notre Dame. I'm going where I'm going to go. But our job as coaches is to be like, hey, man, hey, young lady, you can go to Mount St. Mary's, right? You can go to Carthage. You're going to get a lot of minutes. You're going to be a star on campus, right? And you're going to get an opportunity to play, and they're going to let you in. So the other thing that I say in these talks all the time, and feel free to use this next week when you guys are doing this, all right? This is the tagline now for college water polo. Admissions is the new scholarship. Admissions is the new scholarship. Because the other thing is, coach, this is the open mind part. I want to go D1. I got to go D1. I got to go D1. I got to get a scholarship. I got to get a scholarly. You know, that's what I'm at, right? That's what people are, I'm going to get a scholarship. Well, the college landscape's changed a little bit. Admissions is the new scholarship. If a coach can get you into school, right? If they're saying, hey, we're going to get you to Wagner. I'm going to get you in, and here's $500 for books and some food, right, each semester. That's a huge win. And now women, it's a little different than men. There's a few more scholarships on the women's side for the men, but I can tell you on the men's side, if they're helping you get into school, awesome, take it. Admissions is the new scholarship. So we have to level set that as well, and we talk about financial aid that's out there, and actually water polo merit-based scholarships. Very difficult to get. And that's why I throw up that first slide when I give the talk, is I try to tell them, if you are one of these two people, if you're Maddie Musselman or Ben Halleck, you're gonna get a water polo scholarship. This is not the upper 1%, this is the upper 0.25% that's out there. If you're gonna be an Olympian at the age of 18, yeah, I think you're gonna be okay in this process. But other than that, other than them, everybody else has got to work at this. Including people who are starters on our junior national team, including people who are all CIF first team, including people who are all state first team, have to work at being recruited. Unless you're an Olympian at age 18, everyone else has got to put their time into it. That's it. And so that means you own the process. So you got to be proactive. So the other thing that we screw up as coaches is we say, well, oh, did the coach call you back? Did the coach email you back? How have they been with their communication? And we're like, no, it's on you. Again, their friends are dealing with this, and I feel for them, right? I feel for them. I felt, because I played high school basketball. I've told Coach Hill this before. I played high school basketball. I was better at water polo, but I played high school basketball. But my friends were getting recruited all the time. And your athletes are dealing with this, right? They play water polo at their high school in Ohio, and then they go in the classroom and they're like, there's a soccer player next to them, or a basketball player next to them, and they're getting letters, and coaches are calling them, and limos are pulling up to their house, and all kinds of rules are being broken, and all kinds of stuff's happening. It's like the movie Blue Chips, right? It's all happening in front of your eyes. Now, we don't have that experience in water polo. We don't get that. So we have to level set you have to level set your athletes and inspire them on a daily basis and let them know that it's their responsibility to be the ones who are out recruiting themselves. They have to recruit, they have to go sell themselves. They have to be the ones selling. They have to be motivated enough to put in the work themselves in this process. And that means, and then we go through all this, you guys can go through, making a resume and putting it out and having it out. They have to do that. And when the coach doesn't call them back, or they say, oh, the coach never reached out to me, you can't tell them like, yeah, they're not interested, because it's just not true. Right? Now, we've been able to pass some legislation recently from my position at ACWPC, where we've gotten like a second assistant coach at the college level, so there's more college coaching jobs that are out there. But for the most part, you're still talking about places where the men's coach is the same as the women's coach. And then that same men's coach is the same. This was my life at Bucknell when I knew most of you guys back in the day, right? I'm coaching men and the women, and I have one assistant coach that does both with me. So it's 2 people, and I had 20 people on each team. So it's 40 athletes total that I'm caring for, and 2 people there. So the coach to athlete ratio, 20-1. I'm not a math major, did I get that right? 20-1, right? 20-1, okay. And then I have to level set the athletes when you're talking to them. Well, my friend who plays women's basketball keeps getting a letter every day. How many people are on a college basketball roster? 15. Max, right? Generally 12 on the bench, right? All right, so 12. Right? How many staff members do you see behind those 12 athletes on the college basketball team? You know? 7, 8. It could be up to 8 staff members behind the 12 athletes. And I'm not good at math, but that coach to athlete ratio surpasses ours, right? And so when they're saying, oh, I got a handwritten note from Mike Krzyzewski on my plate, I guarantee Mike Krzyzewski did not write that note, okay? We know this for a fact, right? We know this to be very true, having worked at all our colleges and where we're at and where we've been, we know this to be true. When your athletes get a letter, and this is not a knock on UCLA or any other the Pac-12 schools that we have that have water polo, when they're getting handwritten letters from the head coach there, chances are it's not there either. There's an office with a group of interns who are producing these things, mass producing these things out for everybody. So it's difficult. It's a different process navigating. Am I making sense? But I just want to make sure your athletes get this, because if you're not telling your athletes this, and they have to come hear my talk or someone else's talk or hear one of our coaches give this speech somewhere else, it's going to be difficult for them. And then they get depressed, and then they get frustrated in the process, and then they're like, this sucks, the world's out to get me, right? I don't want to play college. And then 5% of high school water polo players in America are playing college water polo, and the other 95% aren't there. And why isn't water polo growing faster in this, and we ask ourselves, why can't water polo grow faster? How do we grow the sport? I can tell you how we grow the sport. If we get that number up to 30%, if we get 30% of high school athletes to play in college, they're going to be more motivated to keep water polo as part of their life the rest of their life. They're going to be coaches, they're going to be referees, right? They're going to give back, they're going to be administrators, they're going to be wherever they're at, and water polo is going to be part of what they do, and this sport grows dramatically in a very quick way. Sorry, I'm a little fired up about this. I've been doing this for a long time. I love this. I want your athletes playing in college. And I come out here and I recruit all the time out here, right? And I want these athletes to be out here, and I want them all playing at the college level, right? This is what what the chart I was telling you about. It's about 5% on the men's side are playing the collegiate level, 5.8 on the women's side, right? And it's, if you're an ice hockey player, if you're a female ice hockey player in high school, 25% of you are going to play. So it's not like the rest of these numbers are that dramatic, right? But in I said this yesterday, we're in a microcosm of water polo, right? So whatever happens to us is way more dramatic. The fact that it's only 5% of the tens of thousands that are playing in high school across the country, that's dramatic for us. But when you're talking about, let's say, basketball, and there's 4% of women, high school women's basketball players are going to play the collegiate level, that's 4% of millions. It's 4%, so the number's larger, right? So we want to get to that point. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So, my son and daughter have been recruited at other sports.
Yeah.
And we have, other sports are using this in the opposite direction.
Mhm.
The same chart saying that not every child can get to
Yeah.
the collegiate.
Correct.
So if they're a dual sport and you have coaches saying, you have to play year-round because only 5%
Totally.
of your lacrosse players are making it, and you need to focus on that and drop everything else, how do we keep these kids motivated as their second and third sports?
That's an awesome question, and I'm glad you brought that up. So I'll tell you why, because this goes back to, and I maybe just alluded to this because there's I'm trying to talk about a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. I alluded to the fact that our schools are having a hard time filling their rosters, that we have varsity water polo programs around the country that have a hard time filling their rosters. That's the difference, right? But when you're a dual sport, so that's one thing, I'll say something else, but when you're talking about a roster, basketball roster that only has 12 spots, and you are one of millions of women's basketball players in high school basketball players in the country, and you're trying to make one of the 12 at Baylor or Duke or something, yeah, it's going to be hard. And then so you go back and, hey, level set. They use it to level set that way. What I'm trying to motivate you is like, why does W&J only have 10 girls on their roster, right? When Urbana adds, and Coach Montenegro, who just took that job, and she's going to be out here recruiting and doing all these things to get there, why she should not have a hard time filling her roster. But I bet she will the first time around. And it shouldn't be that way. So that's the difference, I think. We're using it because we want people to go out there and take advantage of the opportunities, and we're growing. More programs are going to be adding, and they need to be there. The other thing I would say for dual sport athletes, right, is that if they're playing water polo and something else, is this chart tells them, and what you just said, tells them why they should play water polo instead of the other sport. So I use that when I have an example right now. I'm mentoring a young athlete near my house in Tustin who's a pretty damn good football player. He's a good football player. Plays for Orange Lutheran High School. Like, he's a linebacker. He's like 6'5", right? Pretty athletic dude. But also plays water polo. But chooses not to play high school water polo because high school water polo is the same time as football season, so he can't do both, right? So he plays club, and now he's doing this. So he can probably play like D2, maybe 1AA football. But if this kid decided to play water polo, I'm like, dude, if you play water polo, you are going to be on the fast track, right? You're not only going to get to play D1, right? You probably have a chance on our national teams, right? You have a chance to really explode. And that's how I level set back the other way. So in water polo, because of this situation we're dealing with, athletes are going to advance much quicker. I was telling Coach Martin Bell was in here yesterday. He was sitting in that chair, that's why I'm pointing at that now. All right, but I was telling him the story last night. 15 years ago, his brother Kevin Bell, you may remember a kid named Kevin Bell that played out here, right? I recruited the hell out of Kevin Bell from Chicago. I really wanted Kevin. You know why I wanted Kevin Bell? Not because he was a good water polo player, right? He was left-handed. He was the state swimmer of the year, and he was a mean football player, right? He was a mean football player. That kid was going to kill anybody, right? When you throw him in the water, he's a hell of an athlete. He was a hell of an athlete, right? And he chose water polo in college, right? Went on Navy, had a great career. They won several championships, right? And did great. So this is kind of preludes the next, one of the points I want to make at the end is we're looking for athletes, right? Looking for athletes. If you're an athlete, water polo is one of those things that you can excel at pretty quickly, when you make that happen. So I think it works both ways, right? It works both ways as you get through it. Some of this stuff I'll just talk about briefly. You guys have talks, stuff that'll get you going on eligibility centers, right? Stuff like that. You got to make sure you're educating. I talk about NCSA. Water polo athletes don't need this at the highest level, right? So I just said there's coaches that are begging to have your athlete on their team. So they don't need to go spend $1,000 on something, right, that's going to make sure that they get recruited. You're one person away from getting your athlete heavily recruited at a school that they may not have heard of. That's fine.
but getting them going, right? Getting them going in this process. So we talk a lot about Division 1, 2, and 3 with them, and the differences, and why everything I just said before, right? About we talked to them about how it's D1s and D3s play each other, all those things. But the one thing that I want to throw out there at the end here is this scholarship thing. Because you're going to go to financial aid talks, or you may have a college counselor or somebody talk about it. But now I'm only talking about this from the water polo perspective. And you want to be able to educate them on the water polo perspective of what the financial aid situation is like. So when you go on and somebody gives a speech at an NCAA thing and they say, well, in men's water polo, schools can give 4.5 scholarships. That's great, that's factual. It's a factual thing they took from a manual somewhere that they're saying, right? But that's not the reality of how that's interpreted for all of us, right? That a women's water polo program can offer 8 scholarships there. Okay, so now we have to dissect that for what that means on a water polo level, okay? 8 women's scholarships at a school means D1 schools, right? So it does not mean D2 schools and does not mean D3 schools. It also means the D1 schools like the Ivies and the Bucknells that I talked about before do not offer athletic scholarships, right? In that same way, they don't have 8 scholarships. So, but a coach, I heard at the NCAA talk from my college counselor that 8 scholarships are offered at D1 schools. You're a D1 school, I thought you had scholarships. It's not the case. So you got to dissect that a little more, right? The 4.5 scholarships that are offered on the men's side. This is D1, only D1. And that's if, again, these are the maximum allotted. So a women's varsity D1 program could be allowed to have 8 scholarships, but they not have 8 scholarships. A men's varsity D1 program can be allowed to have 4.5 scholarships, but they may not have 4.5 scholarships. I spent 4 years at UCSB, we talked about it. We were allowed to have 4.5, but our equivalency was 3. We had 3 scholarships to give out. Our roster size was generally 30 people. Again, I'm not a math major, right? So I'm trying to divide 3 scholarships amongst 30 people. And you have to play that game every year of how you parcel these things out. So the financial aid story is a whole other one, right? That's why, again, I'm going to say it, admissions is the new scholarship. Admissions is the new scholarship. Did that coach say you can get them in? Then you got to go from there. The amount of people, college is getting incredibly competitive. The amount of applications that these schools are getting is unreal. I was telling these guys a couple days ago, I'm following my alma mater, UC Irvine, on Instagram. They put out something where they're excited that 122,000 applications came through on the November deadline this year. 122,000 people applied to UC Irvine last year. I promise you, everybody here, I would not have been accepted when I 20 years ago, when I was applying to you. It wouldn't have happened. It's just, there's no way. So when a coach is telling an athlete, one of your athletes, hey, I can get you in, you're going to be accepted. That means they're giving your athlete the opportunity to be accepted instead of one of the other 121,999 applicants that went through that place. Think about that in context. Admissions is the new scholarship. Admissions is the new scholarship. They can help you get through what is becoming an incredibly difficult process to navigate academically and admissions-wise. I can give 100 other examples, right? But that's the context you want to give, right? Long Beach State, there was a Long Beach State alumni I met in here yesterday, right? That was there. You know how many people applied to Long Beach State last year? 98,000 people applied to Long Beach State last year. 98,000. And I have to deal with the snobby Californians that I'm around a lot, right? That tell me, my kid, the safety school is Long Beach State. They're safety school. They're not going to get in. 98,000 people applied. 98,000. You try to get in. This is competitive. Admissions is the new scholarship. Admissions is the new scholarship. So which is why, when I put this chart up, this is new, I just added this. The number of schools at the Division 1, 2, and 3 level. The most schools that are out there, 443 at the Division 3 level. That means there's more opportunities at the Division 3 level than any other level in NCAA sports. It's not a water polo slide. This is an NCAA slide. This is NCAA Research Twitter, right, that I told you guys to follow, right? Find some gems on there. 443 institutions. There are more Division 3 athletes playing college sports in America than any other division. So this is why, for 30 years, and myself and some other people in this, who try to grow our sport, have been trying to start a Division 3 national championship for us, right? So I'll give you some context. This is stuff I can't tell the kids, right? But I said on the men's side we have about 50 or so varsity programs, the men's, right? Divisions 1, 2, and 3 combined, 50. You know what? If you read that same NCAA rule book,
You know how many varsity programs are needed for the NCAA to sponsor a championship? 50 per division. 50 per division. We have to have 50 Division I men's programs period for them to be sponsored. So we're lucky. The NCAA is basically doing us a favor, right? We are like one of the most favored sports in the NCAA because they shouldn't even be offering an NCAA championship for us. And when I'm in that same room in badminton and cheerleading or other emerging women's lacrosse or some other emerging sports, like we want a championship, like now you got to have, on the women's side it's 40. You got to have 40 women's programs for us to sponsor a championship. But water polo gets it. So I'm like counting my blessings how long this is going to last, right? So I got to get as many programs to add water polo as possible, right? So where can we add and where can we help? Where is the growth going to happen? The growth is going to happen on the Division III level. But now I can't say this to the kids. I say this to the kids, but I say this to you. The Division III schools are not going to succeed unless your athletes go to them. So unless you're telling your kids you should go play Division III water polo, this project's going to fail. Unless those kids are excited about going to Division III water polo, this is going to fail. Unless you guys go coach those Division III programs, this is going to fail. I need you guys to go take those coaching jobs when they open up. So this is the other, I love talking about this. Hopefully this is interesting, right? These ADs call me and they say, right? Hey, I posted this job for a Division III job. Coach Dan Sheridan and I talk about this all the time. We're trying to add programs across the country. We had a CWA program in the Midwest or the Northeast, and that AD goes, 3 people applied for the job. What kind of sport are you running? 3 people, and 2 of them are from Europe. Live in Europe at the moment, right? That's true stories. So why should I add varsity water polo again, right? So you guys as coaches need to be motivated, right, to be able to take these jobs. You guys have to be motivated about going and moving and taking that job. Coach Lason will tell you, I was in sunny Southern California, right, living in Burbank, right in Hollywood Hills, and I took a massive risk to go be the assistant coach of Bucknell in 2005. Lewisburg, Pennsylvania is very different than Burbank, California. It's very different. Very, very different. Okay? So you can't tell me that you're not willing to go an hour away, right? And be somewhere else. To take the Urbana job, to take the Augustana job, take the Milliken job, to take this Mount St. Mary's job. All these jobs that are out there, I need you guys to go take. Promote your assistant, and I need you guys, people who are motivated and ready to tackle these programs, and get on. Take the risk. I can tell you, if I had not taken that risk, now 15, 16 years ago, I wouldn't have got through a lot of the cool stuff I've done now. So I don't say that to the kids because this is not part of the college talk to the kids, because that's not relevant, right? But for you guys, I can tell you, risks are rewarded in our sport because the amount of opportunities that are there and the amount of people competing for those opportunities are very few. So that's my motivational speech for you to go apply to be a college coach. Yes.
So how do you compare that with the desire for a kid, like, hey, this is my #1 academic school, and it's club water polo.
Yeah.
Or in the same context with the coaching, go take this coaching job. I make more as a teacher.
Yeah.
And so so like there's those layers to it too.
I think it's, for sure, it's case by case, and I think it's something that we want to, on the college level, right? I think what you're looking at and what the difference would be is understanding the lifestyle choices that you're able to get into this, right? That's a longer conversation we could have, about what type of lifestyle those jobs kind of give you. The same thing for the athlete. Hey, this may be I wanted to go to university. I have this talk in Florida all the time, and in Texas, because in a lot of those states, for the students, they can go almost tuition free, right, to the university based on a state program, right? So like a state in Florida, if you have more than a 3.5, or you start getting discounted tuition all the way up if you have a 4.0, right? You're going to Florida, right? Essentially for free, right? Because they try to keep their talent in house. So I'm saying, well, I can go play club at Florida, versus you're telling me to go to Mount St. Mary's in Maryland, coach. Why do I do that? And again, the difference would be trying to sell them on the lifestyle that they're going to have as a varsity athlete on campus in that context. Yeah.
I mean, what is the average lifespan of a D3 NCAA coach?
Yeah. Long. Very long. Because the lifestyle is great, Paul Split. That's what I'm telling you, right? That's the question, right? The question is the lifestyle is fantastic. So when I didn't want to leave Southern California, right, and I wanted to stay, had one of those D3 jobs open up, I would have stayed. The reason none of them opened up is because people are there and they stay for 30 years. Would you leave a job, right, that pays you to do water polo full time, right, comfortably, in a wonderful university with high academics and good resources, right, and tell you don't have to coach in the summer? It's a pretty good deal, right? But I may make less right? Maybe I have other opportunities in the summer to make more money, do other things, right? And it gives me a lifestyle choice. So the average lifespan for those coaches is actually quite high. It's actually quite high. And so one of the things that we did to start promoting this, or a project that people have been trying to do for a long time, we finally got it through this last year. This is something I've been working on for the last 5 years. Other people have been working on it for 25, and finally we got this pushed through, was this Division III National Championship. This is not a sanctioned NCAA championship, right? Because for me, and I just told you why it needs to be, what I need for it to become an NCAA sanctioned champion. I need 50. We get 50 men's programs, we get 40 women's programs across the country, then I get to wash my hands of this, and then NCAA takes it on in victory, right? And they go from there. We're halfway there on the women's side. We're about 20, 21 on the women's side, about 20 on the men's side, right? So we need to double our numbers in the next, I'm hoping, the next 5-6 years, right? That gets this taken on. But why this project has been really, and I'll show you this video in a second here, why it's become important to me is that the Division III schools have now really embraced this. So now your next sell to your athlete of like why you should go to that D3 school is you get to compete for a national championship. You have a pathway to win a national championship. The place was packed, parents are celebrating, you know, people are jumping in the pool. They have a pathway to a national championship. Why did, on the Division I side, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I see Coach Latham looking at me, right? But why was there the conference breakups before, right? Why did teams leave, some of these D1 teams leave the MPSF, right, and form their own conference? They wanted to have a pathway to compete at the NCAA tournament because they want to be able to tell their recruits, I have a chance. Yeah, I got a chance. We got a chance. We're going to compete at this level, and it's worked, right? UOP, University of Pacific, competed in the finals this year. And I can tell you that UOP would not be in the finals. University of Pacific would not have been in the final men's NCAA Division I championship game this year had they not left the conference before. That structural change allowed for them to be there. Now we can all have the arguments of whether they deserve to be there or not, or they're the best team, whatever. But the structural change allowed for this to happen. Well, guess what? The structural change of having a Division III national championship is going to allow you guys, as high school coaches, as club coaches, as everyone in the country, say you have a chance to compete for a Division III national championship. So basically what we did is we've put up the money, we've put up the infrastructure, we've negotiated with all the conference commissioners, right, to see this thing happen, right, in the hopes that if we continue to do this and sponsor this in perpetuity, that eventually we'll add enough programs along the way. So places like Austin College in Texas now, all right, they, in their first 3 years, could have competed, or very close, and potentially maybe with the women, who knows, could be at this Division III national championship. What does that do for the other Division III colleges that are around them in Texas? Well, if Austin College can do that, we can do that. Right? And the other thing that, when I told you guys before, right, why D3 is the place to go, I said there's more Division III institutions than any other institutions in the country. There's more athletes playing varsity sports at Division III than anywhere else in the country. Speaking to you very directly and candidly, these schools need students. They're dying for students, right? Their enrollments are down, right? And applications are down, right? They are. I can send you more and more articles that you've maybe seen of small liberal arts colleges that are going bankrupt, right? That are folding, or that are merging with another liberal arts college nearby, right? Because they have to stay in business. So what's one really good way to stay in business? Have 20 varsity athletes, maybe 40, if you add men's and women's together at the same time, that help pay tuition, right? That are bodies on campus, that increase the number of applications they have to where they need to be. That's the formula. So by setting up this Division III national championship, we've put these schools in position. Now they can say, if you add varsity water polo, you're 2 steps away from being in a national championship tournament if you can get it together, right? You have a chance to compete for this thing. And that's a big deal. Yeah.
One of those things like sitting in this room, you may be sitting going, my life's where it's at, I'm not moving.
Yeah.
What does this mean to me? But Texas is what clicked in my head.
Yeah.
The success there has grown their club program and their high school program and everything around it because those kids are now seeing their peers and their older brothers and older sisters and other athletes in their area get to play and compete for something
Completely.
at a bigger level. And kids don't know the difference, like, especially the little ones like, oh, they won a D1, D2, D3. They just hear a national championship.
You should see, I'm going to show you, you're 100% right, you're going to see what this is about. And there is a direct correlation between, I'm glad you brought it up, that Texas high school water polo is now it's an official high school sport in the state of Texas, if you haven't heard, right? So now the high school governing body in Texas, the UIL, is now sponsoring high school water polo across the state starting in the fall of 2021. All these things are related, right? And you guys know that you're one of the few states here in Illinois that has official high school water polo. right? There's not many of us, right? It's like 7 or 8, right? That have official high school water polo sponsored there, and know how big of a deal that is, and that's why you had such a long history and tradition, right, of great players coming out of here and working on this. That enthusiasm that you're talking about, Coach Hill, is present here. Tell me that's not real. Doesn't matter, right? So, I've taken more than my allotted time, right? But we go through this with the athletes and we talk about this, right? This D3 thing is real for them, right? It's there. We want them to have this. The resources for all this stuff we tell the kids are there, so it's same for you. We talk about prioritizing stuff. We talk about how important academics is, right? And the way I say it from a coach's standpoint is it doesn't matter that, it's not just that you need the grades to get accepted into the school. It's that we just want people who are serious students. As a college coach, I don't want to have to babysit you when you get on campus, right? It's not that it's not that I need the GPA for you to get accepted. It's that I don't want to have to babysit you. I want to make sure that you're someone who's committed to being a college student as well as an athlete. We talk about some myths. I want to show these to you guys briefly. I tell the athletes this. Coaches get admitted whether they want. No, that's why school's important, right? Oh, but I play water polo, coach, because their friend who plays basketball, who isn't doing very good in school, is like, well, that coach got me in. They've helped me. Admissions is the new scholarship, but they can't get everybody who can get it, right? Make sure they understand that. Coaches get to communicate with their admissions office all the time. False. Know that you're going to have to hound coaches. Right? You're going to have to help them with this and help them understand. I said this at the beginning. This is how they communicate. I like saying this. Water polo scholarship exists? No. Admissions is the new scholarship. And if you get a scholarship, awesome. Fantastic. You get a little money here, you get a little money there to do something, that's a bonus. That's a bonus. Now women, it's a little different. There's a little more money out there for the women, but still, I think the best level set for your athletes is to get them to understand that the admissions is the new scholarship, and then they'll be happy with everything else that comes along. This is it. If a coach doesn't contact me, he or she is not interested. False. You are the ones who are the ones to be communicating with these coaches. You are the ones, as athletes, who have to be doing this, and as coaches, you got to support them on this. They're the ones who have to do most of the communication. There are rules around coaches. You guys will have conferences that can talk about the rules. I don't have to talk about that. But I do talk about the communication, the art of the communication, not the rule of the communication. And the art of the communication is important for you guys too. I tell the athletes, if you email a coach 3 times, you've emailed them once. So as a college coach, I was getting, and Coach Lace and other people can say, I've gotten 100 emails a day, 120 emails a day. Currently, where I'm sitting, I have 5,400 something emails in my inbox. Maybe some of you email me in this room and I haven't emailed you back, I apologize. But for busy people, just sending someone an email is not the answer anymore, right? It gets lost. Email them 3 times, get one. Now, the reason I put trending is the kids can figure out social media, right? If someone's trending in my inbox, I usually email them back. Right? Because at some point I'll be like, okay, Ashley emailed me once. Oh man, I forgot, I haven't had time to respond. Twice, 3 times. Oh, she's trending in my inbox, I'm gonna respond, right? I gotta get back, right, to her, right? So make sure that they stay proactive in their communication, right? Remember this rule. Make sure they're using mature email addresses. We talk about this a lot. Beware of copying and pasting. You can help your athletes with this. This is an epidemic, right? We could tell stories for days about this, right? Of how they can copy and paste. They'll say, hey, I'll get an email as the Santa Barbara coach that says, Dear Coach Layson, I'm really excited about coming to UC Santa Barbara. I'm like, well, you forgot to copy and paste the right coach into this email, right? Where are you at? Well, how does Coach Layson going to feel, right, when he's getting a coach that's directed to Coach Weigand, right? Or how I'm going to feel when I get an email that's directed to Coach Mercado, right? Happens all the time. Happens all the time. Can you write a personal email? There's an art to this. So I talk to the students, or to the kids about this, we talk about the art of it, right? Can you be personal, right? Can you give them something good? Real quickly, what we used to do, what I tell the athletes is in this email that I want them to have is be personal. You know what a great email to Coach Layson will be, and you can validate this or not, right? But if I was interested in going to UC Davis, legitimately as a student athlete, I would write this email. I wouldn't say, hi, my name is John Abdou, attaches my resume, and copy every other college coach in the country on the email and say, Please let me know if you're interested. That's the exact opposite of what you want to do. If I want to write an email to him and I want to be excited, say, dear Coach Layson, congratulations on defeating UC San Diego last night, 8-7. Looked like it was a great game. I followed the stats online, or I watched the live stream. You guys did a great job. I see that Holden Tamblin from Ann Arbor, Michigan, scored a key goal in the game. It's awesome that you have athletes from the Midwest on your roster. All right? My resume is attached to this email. All right? I am also interested in playing UC Davis. Please let me know a time that I can reach out and see you on campus. That tugs on his heartstrings, right? Now it's like, hey, this athlete is following my roster. They know when we're winning and losing. They know where other athletes on the roster are coming from, right? They're paying attention to what's happening, as opposed to some generic thing where you're putting it out.
I got one the other day that just, he's referencing other coaches. I've gotten many with the wrong coach name. I got one the other day that just said, Dear Coach XXX. I wrote back, I'm like, you might want to check the title.
Yeah.
Coach.
Well, you guys know that they are fighting ministry.
I know. But there's attention to detail that's important.
Yeah. It's like courting though, right? When you're courting someone and you're dating someone and you're trying to ask someone to the prom, and when I tell this to high school students, right? They may know that you're interested in other people in this as well, right? But you don't tell them straight up. You don't go to the girl you're asking on prom, like, you're option number 2 right now, right? I'm hoping I get into Stanford, but if I don't get into Stanford, I'm gonna call you, second. But if this girl says yes, I'm gonna go with her, but not you, right? We all know the game, right? But there's an art to it. This is courting, right? This is the joke I tell the athletes, right? Imagine if you did that. You're number 3 on my list. If you're number 3 on my list, I'll let you know though, but give me 2 to 3 weeks, I gotta find out if options 1 and 2 work out, right? There's an art to this, right? There's a communication. Coaches, we're sensitive egomaniacs, right? We want to know that we're nobody's second choice, right? We want to be on this. Quickly, let me rifle through this and I'll answer questions, because I know I've already taken. This is something I'm so passionate about that I can talk for a full day on. Official visits, unofficial visits, know that's out there. We talked to them a lot about institutional camps. Great way to bypass NCAA rules, right? Being on campus. We can ask about that later. Scholarships and aid, I kind of went through this already, right? People that they can do that on. And then we talk about, this is the last point that I want to make to you guys, right? Because this kind of comes full circle before I wrap up and move on, is that what's most important on a resume for the athletes that you're talking to are vitals, right? The vitals. When I say what's vital, is these things. Because it didn't matter to me that the kid from New Hampshire didn't have water polo experience. It mattered to me that the kid from New Hampshire was a great student, was a great athlete, could swim, right? Knew how to move in the water, was left-handed, knew how to throw the ball, came to my camp in the summer, right? And the kid from New Hampshire can come. What we want is athletes. What we're looking for are athletes. I don't care where the athlete, as a college coach, I don't care if the athlete's from Chicago, St. Louis, Miami, Portland, or whatever. Are they athletic? Because I can teach them how to play water polo. Because guess what? Water polo tactics, right? We can get into all the art and the details of it, but the reality is that water polo tactics are some of the easiest tactics to learn, right? It's the hardest sport to play in the world. It's the hardest sport to play in the world. But from a tactical standpoint, because you played in the water, it's not that complicated. It's not the 50 plays on your arm as a quarterback in football, right? Or 150. I can give you water polo tactics in 25 seconds, right? Swim all the way down to the 2-meter line. Make sure you're spaced. If you're being pressed, pass the ball, right? And don't turn it over. If you're not being pressed, shoot the ball. Done. Water polo tactics. I can tell them how to do this, right? All right? Stay in your lane and make it happen. Yes, we can make it way more complicated than that, right? We can make it way more complicated. It's pretty simple, right? Stay in your lane and don't mess up. Okay? That's a positive possession. You can turn the ball over, awesome, all right? So that means the kid from New Hampshire, the kid from New Mexico, the kid from Texas, the kid from anywhere that may not have a lot of water polo experience can play for me. But you know why they can play for me? Because if they want to learn, if they want to learn from us, and if they have athleticism. So when the 5'2" kid comes to me and says, I'm 5'2", I'm from Chicago, and I go a 121 in my 100 free, but people aren't recruiting me because I'm from Chicago. I'm like, no, they're not recruiting you because you go 121 in your 100 free. Can you go over your hips? If you're going to be 5'3", right, then be the kid from Ohio. I just thought of my other captain, senior year captain from Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, Jason Reckel.
right?
Dude
You
was
know why I
legit.
recruited Jason Reckel and why he played for me at Bucknell all the time? It was awesome. He went to 46 in his 100 free. Okay, 46 100 free and you want to work really hard, and he can actually hold the ball, right? Like he could actually hold the ball and move, right? So I saw him for 5 minutes. He could do this, right, really well, and he could swim fast, and he was a 4.0 and wanted to work hard. Okay, I'll teach her to play water polo. That's where this bias gets broken completely when you have vitals, right? When you have the vital things that are important in this process. So, what did we talk about yesterday? The crossroads of developing athletes for long-term development versus winning, right? Develop long-term athletes and we want them, coach.
Raise your hand in the audience if you just said to yourself, but yesterday you told us not to swim.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're gonna get into trouble with that, right? But we can discuss what that means later.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you this, and I don't know your experiences, Coach Lacey, maybe you have this with your foreign athletes, right? But when I coach foreign athletes, and then Balish Elderly is a good story at UOP too, when this happened to him. I'll tell this so it's not a personal story. But Balish Elderly was one of the best players to play at University of Pacific, and he's currently on the Hungarian men's national team. If you talk to Coach Graham out there, when he showed up, right, like Coach Dan said yesterday, he never did a flip turn in his life, right? Didn't know what goggles were, right? Didn't know how to streamline, do anything. But in the 25-meter sprints, 50-meter sprints, Balish was killing everybody. He was ahead of everybody. So how do you go your whole life, not spend a minute on a swim team, and be faster than everybody on the team, right? And within 1 semester, the swim coach came over and said, I'll teach you how to do starts and turns, right? And they ended up sharing a scholarship the whole way. When I had foreign athletes at Santa Barbara, I'd be like, here's some goggles. They're like, what's that? But they were faster than everybody. So this kind of goes back to that story of like swimming versus not swimming. The water polo swimming can still make you really fast. A lifetime of water polo swimming can make you really fast. Look, there's a lot of conversations to have here. There's a lot of questions in this, but I wanted you guys as high school coaches to be empowered and know that we want your athletes from here, right? As college coaches, we want athletes everywhere, but the reciprocal is you got to encourage them, develop them, level set them through this, right? There's a lot of stuff in that I know, right? And so I'm going to cut myself off, and we can take a break. But this is vital stuff because the college game grows when your athletes playing it, when you guys coaching it, and we value it across the board, divisions 1, 2, and 3, all the way across the board. But thank you guys. Let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back. Thank you guys.